This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Public Works June 5th, 2024 meeting. I will make a motion to open the meeting.
Second.
Thomas Pillsbury,
Yes.
Steve Litwin,
Yes.
Leah Strode,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
All right. As normal, number one on our agenda is public speak. If anybody would like to address the board on anything that's not on the agenda, now is your time.
Sure.
Shirley.
Kathy Wazinski, Overlook Drive. So I have been growing, I've had growing concern about the development that's been being planned within the city in relation to particularly our sewer system, and went back to the tie and bond report from 2018. And as best as I can tell, little or nothing has been done to remedy the concerns that were raised in that report. And it was a very limited field investigation. I know that they recommended additional investigations of the sewer system and the water system throughout the city. I guess one of the questions I had is how much of the rest of the system has been investigated, and is it in similar state to what was investigated by Tie and Bond? Certainly they talked about 25% of our sewer cracks in the pipes, and that means that there's the potential of sewer coming out of those pipes, and that's really a problem if we then start adding additional demand to the system. And I haven't heard much from the DPW or the Board of Public Works in regards to the potential problems that might occur with the hundreds of new units that are planned for coming online, and the interceptors being compromised as well, and the potential for a catastrophic failure of the system. I'm just surprised I haven't heard much from anybody about the problems that could occur with adding that much demand onto the system. And so I'm hoping that you'll address it during one of the public hearings regarding some of these planned developments.
All right, thank you very much. As you know, in public speak, we can't.
I know.
Okay, just wanted to verify that.
At some point, I hope somebody addresses the issue, though.
Yes, we can add it to future agendas and research it for you. Thank you. Any other discussion for public speak? All right, item number 2 on the agenda. We're not expecting the mayor to join us, so item number 3, approval of the May 15th, 2024 meeting minutes. Is everybody able to review what was prepared?
Yes.
Any issues with them as they were prepared?
No.
Okay, then I will make a motion to approve May 15th, 2024 meetings as prepared.
I second.
Thomas Pillsbury,
Yes.
Steve Litwin,
Yes.
Leah Strode,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
All right, item number 4 is a continuing item we've had, the discussion and input from the Main Street design project. Nothing to add to that? I know we were hoping for some results, but...
Yeah, I was hoping to have some information for tonight's meeting, but a meeting that we needed to have with Bowman got pushed until the 11th, so.
Okay.
I don't have any update for the board.
No, so we will continue that to our July meeting, following your meeting with them.
Yeah.
All right, item number 5, the New City MVP grant presentation by Fuss and O'Neill.
For the record, my name is Julie Busa. I'm a resilient scientist with Fuss and O'Neill and the project manager from the Fuss and O'Neill side. I don't know, Diane, if you want to say anything as well.
Diane Smith. I'm the city engineer and working with Fuss and O'Neill on this project.
Question.
Yes.
Can you stand behind
Sure.
Greg actually, so
So
that
that
way the
it's-
cameras,
Yep,
camera catches
absolutely.
it? I'm sorry.
All right.
We'll move.
Put it on.
I'm sure we'll hear if somebody had wanted to.
Understood.
Purposes and goals behind the project. Ultimately, it will result in a complete rebuild of the length of Emerald Place from Ferry all the way down to Clinton. And we're trying to address a couple of issues. One is the that problem, and then installing green infrastructure along the more southern portion of the road, and really anywhere along here that we have room for it. So I'll talk more about that in a few moments. But the idea being to begin handling the stormwater for the neighborhood. Everything from New City drains to this side. And so as part of the New City Infrastructure Master Plan that was done under CDBG funds, we looked at ultimately a concept plan for adding green infrastructure to the entire city, the goal of which would be, rather than piping all of that stormwater over into Lower Mill Pond, that will be infiltrating as much of it in place as we can, scattered throughout the neighborhood. And so because of the slope stabilization issue, this is where we decided to start as far as actually pushing that forward. And so there's green infrastructure along the road wherever we have room for it. At the corner of Glen Cove Place and Emerald is somewhere that we're going to be seeking to infiltrate. That's the only place that we really have space and can get far enough back from the slope to feel comfortable doing that. We like to be about 50 feet away from a steep slope. So this will be an infiltration practice. And then at other locations along the roadway on the outside side, we'll have bioretention planters similar to what will instead road. The one that is going to be the most challenging is the one right across from Glen Cove Place. That's a very deep outfall.
It's also in very bad shape right now, so.
Yep, it's in quite bad shape, and I probably have a better image that'll show that, but it has also over time kind of cut back the bank so that there's sort of a inlet that we're going to be repairing and restoring part of that as well to bring this bank out further where it would have been before it started being chewed away and eroded away. One of the things that we've really been trying to do as part of this project is to preserve the large trees. There are a handful of really large old silver maples along the southern stretch of Emerald Place. As part of the New City Infrastructure Project a couple years ago, we did have an arborist look at those. They're generally in good shape. There were some trimming that was recommended, which will be done as part of the project, but we're trying to preserve those trees. The only one that we know is going to be lost is the one on the inside of the roadway, and that's just because of the spatial constraints there. The sidewalk currently ends, I think, at just past Lincoln, I believe. It just dead ends there. And since this is the only corridor in the neighborhood that has extensive shade and canopy cover, it is a popular walking corridor. And so we wanted to be able to make sure we have a formal sidewalk along the entire length. And so in order to accommodate the green infrastructure, the sidewalk, and an improved roadway with curbs to be able to direct stormwater to the practices and eliminate some of the issues that we've had with runoff, both at the north end and at the southern end where there have been some sinkholes, where our design converts the roadway to one way. And that's already been talked about and I believe fully approved through City Council. So that's been approved already.
And I would like off the road right now, and with putting the curbing in, they won't be able to park or drive off the road. So we, in order to accommodate that, we would have actually had to widen the paved area in order to make it a two-way in that section.
And-
The cars leaving the road is making the problems of erosion and the slope stabilization worse.
Right. And so right now people are parking actually off the road on the top of the slope. And as Greg pointed out, it's causing rutting and erosion that's worsening the drainage and erosion problems. And so we do also have formal parking sort of bump outs along various points. And I believe in the end we have, I want to say it's 11 spots. I could tally them up to confirm that. But we've been looking at how many spaces are occupied, or how many, well, there are no spaces now, but how many cars are parked there at various times. We've done a number of counts. We've looked also at old historic imagery from Google when they've gone over, and we're comfortable that we're actually adding more formal parking than what's typically in use at this point. So that's the overview of the project. I have more specific plans. As I said, we'll be doing a full reconstruction of the roadway, and so at the same time that we're doing that, we'll redo all of the underground infrastructure. And so the blue is a new water main that runs along the entire length of the road. There are, actually I'll come back to that in a moment. There's no sewer in this portion of the road. The sewer for the homes on this stretch actually is behind the houses, so we don't have to deal with that just yet. That'll come later in the phasing for the infrastructure master plan. So the water will get replaced. All of the underground drainage will get replaced as part of the reconnection with the new green infrastructure practices. And then at the outfalls where we're replacing them, we'll have basically sort of a step pool system. So coming off of the outlets there, rather than just have a typical outfall discharge, we'll have sort of rocky pools to further treat the water and slow it as it gets closer and makes its way down the slope. And so that's another sort of additional water quality improvement measure, but also a means of addressing erosion and slowing the flow coming out of that system. So no change in the overall drainage capacity, or sorry, let me rephrase that. Addressing what we know is going to be an increase in rainfall in the future, but also knowing that the plan for the entire neighborhood is going to take some of that stormwater pressure off of these outfalls ultimately. So we're trying to find a good balance between those two factors so that we're planning for the future effectively, but also not putting in structures that are going to be significantly larger than are ultimately needed either. At the north end of the road, to address the significant slope stabilization problems that we've had over time, we're looking at putting in what's known as a soil nail system. And so in the upper, basically 12 feet from the road down, we'll be clearing vegetation and installing soil nails, which are basically like a long metal post. They'll go in about 20 feet. They'll reach over from the top of the road with an excavator arm and drill these into the slope at an angle. And then I should have a picture. So in this image, you can see each place that there's a node. These are one of the nails that they'll drive in. They'll be spaced about 5 feet apart. There'll be 3 rows. And then there's a mesh that goes on top of them. Looks a lot like chain link fence. And collectively, that kind of holds everything in place. And then we'll be heavily planting through this, so we can plant shrubs and other herbaceous material in here, so that over time this will green up. And in this example, they don't have shrubs, so we'll have a lot more height and variation here. But this will all get planted, so it'll be a green slope, but it'll have this structural support beneath it. And also responding to concerns from the neighborhood and the fact that this is the only real treed corridor in New City right now. We've identified a number of existing trees along this area that we'll be trying to preserve, and we'll kind of wrap that mesh around them to keep some tree canopy there.
And anything below that 12 feet will be fine as well.
Yes.
Too, so it's only the upper 12 feet. And it only goes to Glen Cove, this treatment. It gets a lot less steep once you get past that outfall.
Right. And the images along the top are examples of those sort of step pools that'll come down from the outlets. These are a little bit different than what we're proposing, but the idea is that you create these sort of distinct rocky pools that drop down so that you have additional room for sediment to fall out and be captured. But primarily, it's just slowing the velocities and reducing erosion as that water comes out of the outfall pipes.
The picture on the bottom in the center is great. It's obviously not here, but it's very similar
Yeah.
to what we're dealing with out there.
Yeah, this is a lot of what it looks like where the sidewalk is kind of sloughing. You see that same kind of process now. So that's an overview of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions. We will have 90% plans completed under this grant, and so we'll be nearly queued up to be able to pursue construction funding. The goal is to be ready to do that in next year's MVP and CDBG grant rounds.
And this would likely be phased just because, especially with the slope stabilization, it's gonna be highly pricey. So we're probably gonna have to phase it, especially for grant funding and everything, so.
So in the lower left-hand corner picture where you got the fencing going over there,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you'd be planting shrubbery
Yep.
and grass. Will the fencing be in your way?
No, so what we'll do, we'll be planting small plants called plugs that are sized to be able to just plug into the spaces in the mesh. So those will nothing that we plant initially will. There are some plants, some of the shrubs that we plant will kind of grow into that mesh. Ultimately, it'll probably as the core plant is getting so big that it's dying, it's sort of self-replacing itself.
Thank you very much.
Will there be additional public hearings?
Yes, so through permitting, there is currently a Concom process that's going on. The next meeting for that piece of the permitting process is next Monday. And I don't know if there will be formal public hearings other than that, but there have been a number of outreach events in the neighborhood over the last 2 to 3 years at this point.
We've had 4 over the last, since 2021.
Mostly citizens are saying they're being ignored, so I'm just wondering whether they'll have another chance to be heard and whether anything will be done about their input.
I can say that a lot has been done to the design already based on the input we've heard. And the city's continuing to respond to comments as they come in and to understand some of the concerns. I think that some of the issues that have been raised are still related to an earlier version of the design that was talked about back in last spring, I think, about a year ago, and a lot has changed since then. That was more of a conceptual level design. One of the concerns initially had to do no real issues being able to back out of driveways and have enough room to do all of that. We've also, as I mentioned, taken a closer look at the number of parking spaces needed and kind of reconfigured those to be able to best match them up to where people are actually using parking now. Those are the main concerns that we were really hearing so far.
How wide is the path going to be?
The sidewalk, it will be a normal 5-foot sidewalk.
In the emerald,
In the, that's
this
a good,
section.
yep. Yeah, let's flip back to this for a moment. So the piece from Lincoln Street down will be a normal 5-foot sidewalk. The piece from Ferry to Lincoln is going to be an 8-foot multi-use path, which ultimately the plan is to continue that 8-foot path all the way down Lincoln to Everett. So it'll be a connection through the neighborhood.
And there's gonna be a buffer between that 8-foot, like a 2-foot buffer, I think, between the 8-foot path and the edge of road too.
Yeah. Yeah, so in this stretch you'll have and also for clarification, from Ferry to Lincoln will remain 2-way. The 1-way conversion begins, it'll run from Clinton up to Lincoln this direction. This will remain 2-way, so no change to traffic patterns there. And so you'll have the 2 lanes, a 2-foot buffer, and then the 8-foot path. Cross that you have to do to actually get to the new section of multi-use path along Ferry. And so the pedestrian bridge would cross over the apologies that I neglected to mention that.
And what about the proposed connector trail to Everett Street?
Yep. So this is a much less formal trail. This would not be paved the way that the multi-use path and sidewalk would be, but the idea here is just to have a walking path that allows you to cut through the woods on the property that's owned by the owner of the mill development. Actually owns the whole edge of the slope below the right-of-way. And so we're working on an agreement with him to be able to cut through down to Everett.
Okay, that was my next question. Is there some sort of easement?
Working with him.
And the Lincoln, this isn't just like a path to nowhere. The part of the new city CDBG big neighborhood piece would be to bring that all the way down Lincoln Street. Lincoln and this section of Emerald Place are really the only, I hate to say normal sized roads for 2-way traffic. There's a lot of really tight this neighborhood was mostly made before people use cars all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's a lot tighter of a neighborhood. Like that's the only really main corridor through there. So the thought is to bring that path down Lincoln Street. So in the future.
Another question, is Lower Mill Pond currently considered impaired in any way?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons that this is an attractive project from a funding perspective, because the water quality improvements and the stormwater treatment allow us to make improvements to the overall quality of Lower Mill Pond. This specific project alone will not have a dramatic impact. It will certainly have an impact, but as I mentioned, this is step one. Collectively, that will have a significant improvement.
Awesome. And so this project is going to be phased, but then there are also multiple phases that will come after this for stormwater treatment.
Yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of that funding is coming through CDBG funding.
We're hoping.
Hopefully.
Comes
You know,
from
that's
Yeah.
We don't have
We
funding to
have-
construct any of this yet.
well to construct, but we do have CDBG funding for some more design in this neighborhood.
Okay, great.
Currently.
And the intent is that as each street in the neighborhood gets dealt with, everything is getting done at once. So it's the stormwater, it's the sewer, it's the water pipes, it's, all new everything. So that once we walk away from that street, it doesn't need to be touched for a long time, and we aren't going to have to go rip up new pavement, say, to replace a failure with a water pipe.
And most of this, I think, was from the 30s, was when it was 30s, 40s when it was installed. And likely by the actual factory that was across, that's why it was called New City, it was the city that was built before the factories. So, so it's aging infrastructure in this area, so.
Last question, is the infiltration area right there, is that privately owned, is it public?
we will have to get an easement for a portion of that. The trick is that like the catch basin is already kind of in the
Okay,
private, and it's paved right now. So
okay.
we're gonna work with and see if the property owner, we can get an easement for that to just, and it'll actually be probably better looking than it is right now. Cause it's a low paved spot right now.
Yeah.
Cause that's where a lot of the stormwater is going in this area, so.
And if you're familiar with that location where Glen Cove comes down and meets Emerald, it's also very wide right there, and so we're tightening that up. That gives us some space for the green infrastructure practice there as well. So it'll be more like a normal sized roadway that matches what you're turning onto or off of. Whereas right now it's probably an extra lane width at least.
And everything else on this slope over here has an easement for the drainage and the sewer over there, so.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good. If there's no further discussion on that, I will move on to item number 6. Item number 6 is director's report.
Great. Okay, Union Street, I don't have a ton of updates for you guys. I mean, the sidewalk, the curbing work is moving along nicely. Ludlow's subcontractor Randis Construction is scheduled to begin pouring some of the concrete for the new sidewalks. They're gonna start in the area of Walgreens. It could be as early as Friday. Weather's not looking so great over the next couple of days, so they've been pretty fortunate thus far, those. And then curbing removal and resetting, replacement work will occur over the next couple months. From Family Dollars to 7-Eleven area, so they're moving right along. Still a lot of work to do this, and it'll slow a little bit as the pouring starts, so. I have no updates for the Route 141 paving project. That's still on schedule as far as we know for hopefully starting sometime, actually it's maybe even next month, so that would be great at this point.
Yeah.
Mass West Construction began removing the asphalt in the COA parking lot on Monday. That's basically right on schedule. Did encounter about an 8-inch thick concrete slab over about half of the parking lot from the mail trucks years ago. So we had to do a change order to get that taken out so we could get the grades right. We still have some great gravel that we had in stock. It's kind of a long story, but we trucked a bunch of that up there today to replace the concrete that got taken out and get them some good sub-base material. So paving, as far as I know, is still scheduled for Friday there, so that's moving along great. We did open bids for the wastewater treatment plant aerator project. You may remember we received a Long Island Sound Futures Fund grant and Mass DEP Gap 3 Energy grant. For that effort, we got $883,000 from the Long Island Sound Futures Fund and just over $179,000 from the Mass DEP Gap 3 Energy program. So the low bid for that project came in at $1,075,000, just over $1,375,371. We did have some cost for design and bidding and construction oversight that came in at $286,300. So I've been working with the mayor. We're going to be putting forward a appropriation from capital stabilization of $299,023 to get that construction underway for that project. So very happy about that. Those bids came in well. We're getting all 4 aerators replaced, some work done at the wastewater plant to fix some of the concrete in the aeration chambers, electrical upgrades. It's a really great thing to see moving forward with fairly limited cost to the city as a whole. So being able to pull that grant funding together was huge for us. So it takes a huge item off the IWRMP. So, basically, what is that? A little bit for the cultural chaos setup stuff for this weekend. That mountain closure we had to do Monday caught me off guard a little bit. Came out of nowhere on Saturday. I didn't even know about it till Saturday afternoon, and I tried to push it to Tuesday so we could get some more time to push it out. But it was the situation at hand couldn't be delayed, I guess, with the work that had to happen in oil. So fortunately, it wasn't working Easthampton, so I couldn't. It's like,
as indicated by the alert.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that was that. So.
Yeah, good progress in the city.
Yeah, we got a lot going on.
Alright, there's no further questions for Greg on any of the items he brought up?
No.
I will make a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
I second.
Thomas Mulsberry,
Yes.
Steve Litwin, Leah Strode,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries. When did you wanna have the meeting on July 3rd?
Yeah, I think most of us were fine with that,
Yeah.
even if Craig can't.
Should be okay with
Okay.
me, yeah.
All right,
And May.
Yes.
If you're on medical, we can hold down the fort for a meeting or two.
So we won't meet again in June.
No.
Okay.
Not unless there's something critical that comes up for the agenda for.
No, I don't foresee anything.
I will let Barbara know and you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.